welcome. I came in on the middle of the conversation, but heard my name taken as comment. So, luckily, I hope it was all good. I'm sure it was. Yes. But yes, ma'am, if you have questions about conservation or would like to help or volunteer, we absolutely have a place for you.
Okay.
Brianna established herself with as someone with knowledge. I mean, has worked with wildlife and EPA and
Wonderful. There is a lot to do right now. Coronavirus has not slowed down Superfund sites or batch plants or clear cutting or any of that kind of thing. So yes, we are still working like crazy.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I would definitely love to help wherever I can.
Well, you'll hear about Victoria's Conservation Committee when she gives a report shortly on their activities. It's after 7 o'clock, so I think right now we will start the meeting. I'll just say welcome to everybody who is in attendance at this point, all 23 of you. Some of them, most of you we know, some we don't. That's okay. Maybe we'll know you after the end of the meeting. John Lingenfelder?
Yes.
We are ready. Where are we? Here we have we'll go to our committee. Are there any announcements that need to be made before we do committee reports? Anybody have an urgent announcement they need to make? No, good. Hearing none, we'll go to committee reports and we'll start with Victoria Howard, her conservation / eco action committee.
Yes, thank you.
Programs.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, everyone. It's so lovely to virtually see you here tonight. As I mentioned just a couple minutes ago to the nice lady inquiring, we have a lot going on, from clear cutting of trees by Lake Lavon in Collin County to an established Superfund site, Lane Plating in South Dallas, to a almost named Superfund site in Garland. Throw in some batch plants, throw in some other stuff, and if you want to help, we need you. So please, anyone who has interest or would just like to hear my spiel and let me yak to you for a while, please feel free to email me, victoria@dallassierraclub.org. It's on the website, or if you're on Facebook, go to our Facebook page and you can find me as one of the admins. Since I'm also programs co-chair, I'm going to go ahead and tease next month's meeting as well. One of my colleagues on conservation and eco-action has just published a fabulous book about environmental racist zoning in Dallas and all of North Texas. So he is going to be speaking for us, not only at Green Source on air, which I'm sure Wendell will talk about in a moment, but also for us here. So make sure that you come back and hear all about what he has going on. And that's all I got, Dan. Thank you.
You're kidding. That's all you've got?
Well, I wanted to save time for everyone else.
Oh, okay. Well, Wendell, I see that membership is not, it says volunteer and fundraising, but not membership. What, are you no longer doing membership?
No, I think I am whatever I am, and so you get what you get. But
I am what I am.
Yeah, I mean, volunteering is very similar to membership. It's also connected to fundraising. The main thing we have coming up, as Victoria talked about, is we Dallas Sierra Club. For the new people online, Dallas Sierra Club is collaborating with Green Source DFW. Sort of, they're our digital environmental newspaper, and we have started a new program, basically the third Thursday, which is coming up June 17th. It's a live broadcast with guests, and because it's on June 17th, obviously just before Juneteenth, we have dedicated the entire program to environmental justice, and we have several guests. One of them is who Victoria talked about. We're talking about environmental racist zoning. We have another lady from Dallas College we haven't confirmed yet, but she's one of the professors. So she is going to be talking about similar issues, but we're going to really talk also about celebrating Juneteenth and being inclusive and increasing our diversity for the club and for the entire environmental movement. It's no secret that the people of color in the poor neighborhoods get dumped on literally. So we are all binding together and bounding together to fight that type of activity. And that's what it's going to be on. We're also, Dewan Shockley is going to be talking about a new effort in various communities called community gardens. And so that's going to really be wonderful. He's going to tell us about the latest things going on at his community garden and how that not only provides food for the neighborhood, but it also provides community. It provides a place for them to get together and get to know each other. And so that's going to be also, we start at 6 o'clock on June 17th. The invitation will be on the Green Source DFW.org website. Also, I think we also send it out to many of the Sierra Club members who've joined us before. So 6 o'clock, we're done by 7:15. You can eat your dinner, drink lots of wine. The more wine you drink, the better the program is. And so that's what we're doing. But we're making the best of this Zoom business till we can get back outside together. We just appreciate new people and appreciate. Oh, Victoria is my co-host. I forgot. Victoria will be my co-host because I'm going to be on the road. So Victoria, you're going to have to carry some of the load because I'm going to be driving down to Austin that evening.
All right, so we get to see Wendell live and in motion during the show.
Right. I'll have my sunglasses on. I'll be rocking. We'll be having a good evening. But it's an important subject, and we hope everybody can join us. That's all I got, Dan.
Okay. Is Liz here?
She may not. She gets off work late, so sometimes she has to join us sort of in the middle.
Yes,
Okay,
I
David.
haven't seen her yet.
David is not here either, I assume, right?
Haven't seen him yet.
Well, Arthur, would you like to say anything about the outings program and this so-called July 4th date? We don't know what's going to happen on July 4th, but something will have to be said by National, right?
Yes, sure. July 4th was the date that was set some time ago as a date before which nothing would happen. The actual decision point for what's going to happen after July 4th is sometime in the middle of this month. I have not heard anything yet. I expect to hear something actually tomorrow. I got an email saying that there was going to be something announced tomorrow, potentially. I don't know if it's the full information about what the future of outings is or not. I do know a couple things, though, that they do not want to sort of open up piecemeal around the country because the management of that is just, sort of ridiculous. So they want to wait until they believe the entire country is ready to open up for outings. And that may be a little while, I don't know. So we'll just have to wait and see. I fully expect that we will be doing some outings this fall and maybe even a beginner backpack class, but we'll just have to wait and see and see how it goes. Everybody who's not vaccinated needs to get out there and get stuck.
All right, thanks, Arthur. Well, the other chairs have not shown up at this point, so if they do show up, we can hear from them later. So Victoria, at this point, why don't you introduce our speaker for tonight? Is he present, by the way?
I am, sir. How are you?
Oh, hi.
right.
It's
The
Al
winner.
Smith.
Yes. Oh, and I am happy to introduce our friend Al Smith. I always look forward to our programs, but I'm really, really looking forward to our programs tonight because Al, with his colleagues at SocialWise, have made such a difference in the way that North Texas now can go about their advocacy. So I won't steal his thunder and tell you how that is. I'm going to let him have the honors. But Al, it is a pleasure to have you here. It is a pleasure to know you and get to work with you. And I'm so glad everything has been so successful so far.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. It's an honor to be here. Dovetailing on what Wendell was saying, I hope you all drank a lot of wine before this. I'm kidding, but so yeah, I'm Al Smith from SocialWise. I know I spoke briefly to you guys a few months back, but in that last couple of months, we've done a ton of work here in North Texas that I'm sort of thrilled to tell you about. I did make a PowerPoint presentation, although I don't really love it, and I think I would rather just talk. Unless Victoria, you think I should use a visual aid? I'm gonna go ahead and go without it for now then. So basically, because you all know North Texas super well, I made a PowerPoint I can put up if anyone wants it, or I can share it over the channel. But I just want to give you a sense for the work we're doing. So effectively, my theme for tonight is sort of a new normal where we can find ways through community funds or government contracts or donors to supply funding for public benefit work, especially workers working alongside local nonprofits, and replacing what would be the traditional role of a volunteer. So obviously, as you all were mentioning when I jumped onto the call, volunteerism in a post-COVID world has been very difficult. We all know sort of anecdotally, and the data suggests, at least through 2015, that more or less most volunteers tend to be middle-aged and above. That's the bulk of volunteerism in the United States. A lot of that has to do with time and disposable income, also sort of home ownership and an interest in keeping your communities beautiful. But the problem with that is obviously the demographic that may or may not sort of most be at risk of contracting COVID, who was told to stay out of large group settings, to not be out on volunteer sites. And I think as a result of that, even if we go along 5 Mile Creek, the Trinity River, White Rock Lake, we're seeing trash buildup in things because a lot of environmental work has not been done over the last year. And what we do at SocialWise is we have a community fund with EarthX. And with that community fund, we basically have government and charitable donors supply funds for a wage bank to pay underemployed people, including homeless people, people experiencing drug and alcohol recovery, people in prison reentry programs, and just those people who are unemployed or having trouble finding gainful employment. And we pay them $13 an hour to perform public benefit work at the end of every day. And we're doing all of this with local nonprofits. And so it's funny you mentioned Dewan Shockley. I've been spending virtually every day with him. A big push of ours is community gardening. And so, as you all know, South Dallas and Southern Dallas is a historic food desert. And right now we're supplying workers. We have over 500 workers on our platform now, working alongside 31 local nonprofits that are sharing time and working on community gardens. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Restorative Farms, for example, but Restorative Farms in Hatcher Station is a community garden that they're setting up along DART stations. And their trouble was getting volunteers, especially when they need sort of young, able-bodied people who, 5.5 million people lost their restaurant jobs, for example, in the past year. And so you have a lot of people who are looking to work and they need immediate work, but they don't always have an immediate angle to get out there. And so we are supplying workers at Restorative Farms and a number of different community gardens all over South Dallas. And I like to say seeding the network, because now workers are going between community gardens. They're sharing seedlings, they're sharing stories, they're sharing knowledge and know-how. And we're currently, again, at 550 workers here in Dallas, almost all of whom are experiencing homelessness or drug and alcohol recovery. We're working with The Bridge, The Way Back, Miles of Freedom. We're also doing food distributions to focus on environmental justice. Of course, if you don't have good access to produce, you're going to suffer from that. And obviously we need to fix that problem, both with locally grown crops and with food distributions from North Texas Food Bank. So I know these are a lot of words. It's been a busy day. I was actually at 2 community gardens today and just got home in time for this. So I was a little winded jumping on the call, but the effective sense that we have where this becomes a secular growth opportunity is, you hear President Biden talk about infrastructure plans, their American Jobs Recovery Program, and there's trillions of dollars now becoming available for work projects to be done, But this is, I think, where you all come in, which is the federal government, in the Civilian Conservation Corps era, was able to plant millions and millions of trees, employ over time 6 million people, which was 2.5% of the population in 1935. If we did that today, that would be 8.25 million people. And, we only have 550,000 homeless people in the United States. So truly that could solve that problem. But deploying that federal funding, if and when it should come, and also local charitable funding, needs a mechanism to connect those two. And our opinion is that local nonprofits and those who volunteer have a great sense for the work that needs to be done in their very own backyard, that at times a federal government program can supply sort of the financial ammunition, but it's the local nonprofits who really understand that this park needs a lot of TLC, or this area is a food desert that needs another community garden. And SocialWise is able to connect those funds with those workers in need in order to supply those opportunities to replace lost, volunteers, perhaps that were lost due to the pandemic, or just because we're having a shifting in our demographic base in the city of Dallas. But we believe this is this great opportunity to prove that here in Dallas, by working with people like you all, we can deploy people who need work the most on job sites or project opportunities that are environmentally oriented, that need the work the most, and get people paid a living wage at the end of every day to perform that work, and sort of draw people back into a sense of pride in their community, desire to do environmental work, to gain skills in that field, and potentially even to graduate on and move into full-time positions performing environmental work. So that's basically what we do. I know I motor mouth that a little bit. I would sort of love to take questions. And again, I sort of had previously intended to work off a slide deck, but I think a lot of you already know the work we're doing. And the slide deck is sort of, it's a little long-winded. And anyway, I'm happy to answer questions or tell you more.
How long is the PowerPoint presentation, Al?
It's a number of slides. I'm happy. I'll go ahead and share my screen if you'd like me to.
Yeah, because you didn't take very much time.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm happy to share this. Let me know if y'all can see it.
Yeah, we like pictures, Al.
Yes, sir. You got it.
We also would like to ask some questions. The types of work that you described that you're placing people doing is sounds like planting and litter pickup. And so I'm wondering, would it also extend to office work, or making a series of phone calls, or manning a booth and helping that set that up? I don't know when Sierra Club will be permitted to set up booths at events again, but when we are, that's sometimes an issue. And I know some other groups that could use that sort of thing also.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so at the moment, our community fund, which is our pilot fund, is strictly with EarthX, and EarthX has a mandate that everything we do be sort of more or less strictly environmental. So we're predominantly doing tree plantings, community gardening opportunities, litter pickups, and food distribution. And we're sort of able to fudge the line a little bit if the supporting work supports those opportunities. For example, we're currently working with DART on the South Dallas Fair Park Transportation Initiative to pass out and canvas flyers that there's a new available transportation line to people in South Dallas, because obviously mass transportation is environmental justice. And so to answer your question, we're able to sort of make it work, but we're not sort of trying to do too much office or administrative work with our workers at this time. We do want to get another state level fund. We're currently working with the governor of Oklahoma, and they're interested in putting out a $10 million fund for general purpose work. All of it would still have to be nonprofit driven, We would never supply workers to restaurant kitchens or things that were private enterprises. And so we're hopeful that we can expand our mandate, but here in Dallas, we're purely sort of field work, putting stuff in the ground or taking it out or handing it out. That makes sense. So I've got sort of two different slide decks here. I was just going to start off by talking about volunteering in a post-COVID world. This is something you guys understand very well. I know Victoria does. This is sort of her wheelhouse. And I touched on this a little, but we're seeing that there's long overdue environmental remediation work that needs to be done all over Texas here. We are seeing that sort of that demographic shift where 2.2 billion hours of the 6.7 billion hours of volunteer work done in the United States were done by people 49 years and older. Again, that's that at-risk demographic for COVID. And so we're going to have to find ways to energize young people to get out and volunteer and do this work that are I'm going to date myself as being young, but that my generation is not typically used to volunteering. They're still in that process of trying to buy their first home, et cetera. But if we don't find ways to encourage them, and we believe financially is one of the ways to do that, we think we're going to continue to see some of this work that governments or communities typically relied on third-party nonprofits to solve. We're going to need a brand new workforce to that. And we, on that tip, believe there's this great opportunity to tie poverty and environmental funding together. So just want to skip ahead to this slide. Last year in the United States, we had $801 billion going to fund poverty remediation efforts, but only $32 billion of government or taxpayer funding going strictly to conservation or environmental efforts. And we think that marrying those two is a great idea. And so I know you're environmentally focused, but whereas I'm sort of labor focused, but when we see that, in the continuum of care for a lot of cities and counties, they say we're going to solve our homeless issue by addressing these 5 bullet points. And usually it's mental health care, it's housing, it's physical health care, and all of which is very important, but very few groups or organizations try to focus on how do we actually get these people back to work. And so we believe we have this unique opportunity to be the income component of that continuum of care. And the way we do that, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Al, you may have more up-to-date information than I do. My understanding has been that most homeless people actually have jobs. They are working. Yep. But they don't have permanent homes. Either because they don't have enough income or, and some of them some of them have mental health issues, but they already have work. They are already employed.
Yeah, a lot of folks, it's a great point. There's a lot of myths around homelessness. And one of them, of course, is sort of what you're discussing, which is a willingness to work. And we find over and over again that folks already have a job, but the average eviction in Dallas, for example, is over a matter of $330. And once you're evicted, of course, it starts this cycle of poverty where everything gets harder, including maintaining what employment you already have. And so what we do with Socialwise as well is we're happy to have people that are even already gainfully employed, but may sort of be on the lower income spectrum, and we would call them housing insecure if they're living in their car or something. And they can jump on the platform and go out with Texas Trees with us and work for 3 days at $13 an hour, 8-hour days, and not get evicted. You have that car breakdown or a medical bill happen you didn't expect, and suddenly you're living out of your vehicle and not getting to work on time and not being able to shower and not being able to sort of perform your current role. So you're absolutely right. I think in the point in time count most recently, there were 550,000 people considered underhoused at any given night in the United States, but the actual number of homeless people that were chronically underhoused was much closer to 100,000. So 4 or 5 people we would think of as homeless actually have somewhere to go at the end of the night. But it doesn't mean that it's not over a matter of just a little bit of oomph. And if you get people performing environmental work, the side benefit is we see it every day on job sites. We do about 15 projects a week currently, so we generally have about 2 projects a day. people are smiling when they're outside planting trees. You know, they're taking pride in their community. And I think all of those things sort of engender a sense of self-pride and self-worth, which sort of propels people a little further as well.
Hi, I actually work at a homeless shelter here in Dallas. I work at Austin Street Center, and we do have most of the clients do not have their own car, and you know, dark can be a bit of a stretch if you're trying to get somewhere quickly. Do you offer transportation to get the people to the job sites, or is that something that they're required to do on their own?
That's something that we require they do on their own just because of liability reasons. What is interesting though is I believe my partner Montano has been talking to you folks at Austin Street Center, and I believe are hoping to deploy workers right there on your very own community garden. And I'm not sure where that is because I haven't personally spoken with anyone at Austin Street Center, but
okay, I actually oversee that garden. That's on our property.
Oh, phenomenal.
So no, I already work with clients in our garden. Actually, we have a partnership with Restorative Farms. So Owen Lynch and all that, Tyrone, I work very closely with. So small world.
Yep, and we're currently paying Tyrone Day $13 an hour over at Hatcher Station.
Awesome.
We have several of our workers who are outstanding community gardeners over a number of gardens, the Shockley Garden, the Shirley B. Russell Garden, that then we were able to get fuller time positions at Restorative Farms. They could actually learn as well as work.
Sure.
And so we would love to work more closely with Austin Street Center. It's funny, I think it was literally last week and this week that Montano is talking to someone there.
Okay, great. Probably Sanji, but anyway, that's great.
Yes, ma'am. Cool. Well, that's wonderful. You work there. Yeah, we're also working with the bridge, and we do find that in any given referring work, as we would call them, which is sort of this slide here, we have a small percentage of the population that's ready, willing, able to work, has good access to transportation. And we sort of rely on case managers or the people running our referring organizations to supply the insight on who is sort of ready to work. And again, it's just on an as needed basis, and people can book gigs whenever they want, when it works for them and where it works for them. So along those lines, just because I'm on this slide and you'll forgive me here. So on this slide here, what I'm trying to show is the way our model works is all of our workers are referred. We don't currently do any organic sign up, meaning no one can just find our app and download it and use it. The reason why we're doing that is because we're trying to manage for very good experiences. We've paid out over $50,000 already in the last 3 months here in North Texas. And we've done 117 work projects. And so far, knock on wood, we've never had an issue with a worker, which is just phenomenal and gives us great encouragement that when we're sort of reaching out to new environmental nonprofits, we can never guarantee anything, but we like to say our workers are more or less carefully vetted internally by whoever is referring them. And then we sort of monitor closely on job sites as well. And we've just had very good experiences. And just a quick slide here, just to give you this little overview as well, because I think it helps piece it together. We're really dealing with 3 direct stakeholders, obviously the community, the public at large, are stakeholders as well, but we reach out to nonprofits and we say, we don't want to dictate the work. Texas Trees is a great example. We're doing their Cool Schools initiatives. We're supplying workers to their actual tree farm up at Dallas College Richland. And Norman Texas Trees will come to us and say, we're going to plant 73 trees tomorrow at John Ireland School. And we want 10 workers. So he posts that gig onto our app. We have either governments or donors funding that labor. Right now it's donors through EarthX, and then workers can book sort of at whenever they'd like to. And we've, with Norm, to switch over to this other slide deck briefly, Norm has seen this as this incredible thing for him because they always at Texas Trees relied on just a few internal full-time position holders and then a large hope that volunteers would show up to their plantings. Now he's able to deploy labor sort of almost constantly, and he took over as their chief of operations just about 6 months or a year ago. And he's saying, wow, you know, you're making me look great because we're putting hundreds of trees in the ground every single week, which he would not be able to do in sort of this COVID world without paid volunteers. So that's one of the things we're doing. Here's some great pictures from that, people out getting it done all over South Dallas. That's actually DeJuan Shockley there on the left in the blue. But so anyway, so that's just some of the work that we're doing. And of course, you know, Dallas 24-Hour Club is one of our great referring organizations, a lot of good workers there. Their rent, to give you an example, is $10 a night. So Chris, comes back to your question, like, are some of these people housed? They are at 24-Hour Club. Their rent is $10 a night, but at $13 an hour, you can make your entire month and know you have a roof over your head there and just a couple of longer shifts with us at Socialwise. So we think it's just a very leverageable model to help people transition to that next stage. Any other questions while I'm sort of breezing through?
Yeah.
Oh, could you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
I want to ask you about your funding. For the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the money that you're paying the workers is coming from the EarthX Community Fund, is that right?
That's right. So we've got a number of wonderful people that are helping us out a great deal. Mark Cuban and Trammell Crow are funding our project. And we also have some venture capitalists on the West Coast who are kind enough to make donations to the community fund here in Dallas. But really, we found Dallas as our home because Mark Cuban really believed in our project and wanted this work to be done in his backyard. And Trammell Crow has been kind enough to be the custodian of our community fund there at EarthX. And so we've got several $100,000 in funding. We're hoping to get much larger allotments, whether it be government or private donors, aiming towards September or October. But right now we're at a run rate of paying out about $10,000 a week over the last 2 weeks. And so we're putting in what we believe is a lot of good, valuable money into hands that need them the most down in South Dallas.
Who's handling all the finances, the paychecks and everything?
Yeah, another great question. So all of that is done automatically through the app, which is nice. So we don't deal in any cash or anything like that. And the way this has also been helpful is when a worker finishes a shift, if they are underbanked, they can use a debit card with their name on it. But we also walk them through a process using the app to get them a gig wage wallet, which would basically be the start of a checking account for that person. It would create a Cash App account for them and it would send them a debit card. And all of the 1099s are handled, all the paperwork by EarthX.
You're freezing out on us, Al.
Oh, I'm gonna try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Gotcha. So another nice thing is EarthX's community fund is the only payer of record. So they handle all 1099s. So when our area nonprofits go to use Socialwise, they don't have to worry about any paperwork or any payment. The extent of them coordinating or managing that job site is to approve workers clocking themselves in and out. Every worker has a picture on their account, so you know who's showing up, and you clock them in and clock them out. And we also help the person build a digital resume by asking our nonprofit coordinators to give the worker a star rating and leave comments on their performance that day. With our early pilot program with Miles of Freedom that started back in October, we've already had a number of workers from that program alone go into full-time jobs. And they said that them showing their digital resume on their app to their potential employer was a critical moment there. That, hey, I was incarcerated for 20 years, but I've been working for 4 months planting trees, doing community gardening, passing out food at food distributions. I'm a 4.9 star worker, and I've got glowing reviews from everyone who's managed my gig sites. And suddenly that person is no longer, you meet the person at their level. You no longer say, that's someone who's just a recent incarceree. I don't want to work with them. I can't trust them. Suddenly this trust building solution happens where that person has a work record and they're ready to show it to future longer term employers. So
then Chairman Crow is kind of acting as your chief financial officer. Would that be accurate?
We're independent to the community fund, but he is the chief fiduciary, I would say, of that community fund. And the community fund is outside of our control, sort of almost on purpose, just for legal reasons. We don't want to be responsible for approving projects, et cetera, et cetera. And so when a nonprofit says, this is what we want to do, we're going to plant trees, we set up the project, and we get final approval from EarthX that it is a payable gig. Meaning, you know, we've tried to do some canvassings and things like that, that we're on the verge of lobbying, for example. And it's nice to have that check from Trammell Crow to say, this is sort of outside of the purview, guys. Get back to planting stuff in the ground. So in that regard, he's our chief fiduciary, but we have our own internal CFO at SocialWise.
So okay, so to put more money in that fund, you will be looking for donors, corporations, well, anybody that wants to give you money, right? And that would go into this Texas community or this EarthX fund, right?
Yes, sir. And the benefit to the donor is pretty extraordinary, is in a pitch way, because you know, we've got donors who are trying to donate individually to environmental causes. They were also donating to poverty. And as we like to tell them, you can match fund your own donation effectively by every dollar you put in there gets still, that tree is going to get planted, but that dollar is going to go to somebody who needed the money the most. And so you could donate to a poverty organization and an environmental organization and hope there's not a lot of administrative loss. Every single dollar in our community fund goes directly into the hands of a worker to perform environmental work. So in that regard, you're getting a dual benefit.
All right, thanks.
Absolutely.
Victoria,
Al,
did you have a question?
I did, and it actually, you gave me the perfect segue, Dan, so thank you. Al, could you talk about your work with one of our dear friends, Marcus Russell with Commissary is Very Necessary? I see that you've been doing a ton of stuff with them on Facebook.
Yeah, Marcus is fantastic. That was an introduction you made for me, Victoria. Victoria's made endless introductions here. I think we really got to give you some kind of award for all the change that has been downstream from you being so kind to make intros. But so Marcus with Commissary is Very Necessary is an interesting nonprofit because his focus, he would tell you, is environmental justice. But under that umbrella, he includes food distribution, it's community gardening. And Marcus has been a great partner with us because he saw what we were trying to do with community gardens, which was let's not just supply day laborers and hope the garden works. Let's start really building a network of community gardens in South Dallas that can share resources and know-how. And so Marcus has really taken on this role of being the intermediary there to locate gardens that you all probably know this well. Typically with a community garden, you first get it set up, everyone's very excited for a few weeks, volunteerism is high, then it trickles off a little, the garden starts to die off, and then effectively the community garden falls into disarray and the project sort of grinds to a halt. Because we're able to supply continuous willing people to work it and get paid to work these gardens, suddenly we're seeing the gardens flourish. And Marcus has sort of been that great person to say, well, if you don't know Ples Montgomery at Oak Cliff Veggie Project, let's introduce you to him. Let's get workers from Restorative Farms onto that garden. Let's be on the Shockley Garden off Dunbar Street. And so Marcus has just been really instrumental, and he's also sort of doubling as a referring organization for us in so much as he is working with a lot of groups and organizations in South Dallas that can identify people that really need short-term immediate income opportunities.
Excellent. I am so glad that that worked out. So Marcus is such a dear and does such wonderful work. I'm so glad that that partnership was well. Thank you.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen it yet, he's got a new garden at the Advanced Preparatory International School down right at the sort of southern border of southern Dallas. And we've been out there for the last 15 days in a row and turned what was a trash-strewn grass field into a beautiful planter boxed community garden that's thriving. And the students at the school are able to go out and intern on that garden as well. And we're incredibly proud of that. And that's really Marcus is doing at the end of the day.
That is fabulous.
It's the API school, which is Advanced Preparatory International. private school with a STEM focus. They also have an aquaponics lab inside. They teach robotics, and this is all to traditionally underprivileged children here in Dallas. And they, again, decided they wanted to turn a field into a garden. They didn't have the resources to do that. We did. We had the resources and the labor. And it's really been just an incredible thing to witness over the last 2 weeks. It's really come to life.
Al, do you have a Facebook page or a place where people could go and see all the things that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on Facebook just as Socialwise, and I know my screen is shared. I can pull that up if you'd like me to. And really, I know not everyone uses it, but Instagram is a great snapshot way to see what we're doing as well. So I'll just click that up if you don't mind. But it's really the breadth of work we're doing is surprising even us. And if you'll give me one moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry about that. You know, I lived in Hawaii for 7 years, so that's a common thing on my feed. That's a dear friend of mine. I bet. On a Zoom call, but just a good friend. So this is a good record of our work here. This is down here with Marcus Russell. Here's pictured here at the API school. And you can see this beautiful garden is coming in. One Love is helping on that as well. One Love DFW. They're going to also have another job over there soon. But this, again, was just a grass field. And in 2 weeks, we've got a garden popping up. Over the weekend, we also cleaned up at White Rock Lake. The recent rains had run over, so we paid a bunch of workers to join us to clean up this awful mess, which was just a thrill to have people out. You can see how much rubbish we were able to get just in that one morning. I was out on a bike ride there this morning. It looks even worse than it did. We're also, this is Restorative Farms. As you can see, just fabulous things happening there. They were understaffed, and now we have constant workers there with them. This is Metropolitan Dream Center. We're doing food distribution with them as well. And people they're getting loaded up on the app to be paid while they're doing it. And let me see. Here's Marcus again in Plus Montgomery down in Singing Hills at their community garden. And so it's sort of just an endlessly gratifying experience. Texas Conservation Alliance doing their migratory bird walks with folks to count birds that had struck buildings for Lights Out Texas. So Chris, to your point, that's sort of not really a planting job or something, but a bit more of a canvassing or walk around job. But again, if we're gonna get people to turn the lights off on their buildings during bird migratory season, we're gonna need that. Cool Schools Initiative with Texas Trees here. So we're doing a lot of work all over the place, and we're pretty proud of it here. Royce West joined us on a food distribution as well at Miles of Freedom. So these are all things you can check out, socialwise.com, same sort of stuff on Facebook as well.
Al, is your organization registered to participate in the North Texas Giving Day that the Communities Foundation sponsors?
We're not yet. I'm shockingly not familiar with it, but I would love to be a part of that.
Well, yeah, you could raise at least several $1,000s. You could still register your organization. Go to the Texas Communities Foundation, and there'll be a bunch of stuff on how you can register your organization.
Beautiful. Really appreciate it.
That's something, it's free to do that, so you might as well do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was going to add, do it fairly fast because they have a deadline for as an early register, whatever. So look into it quickly and get registered early.
I honestly will do it the moment we get off the call. Thank you, John. And
Al, this is Renee.
Hi, Renee. How are you?
How are you doing?
Good.
What you're doing is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. The community gardens develop a lot of leadership potential and other things among the youth. And I think this is wonderful going from place to place. I was just wondering, some of the materials that they get, do you supply shovels and things like that?
So we don't supply any of the tools right now. I sort of take that back. We do for our cleanups because we have litter sticks and buckets and things we bring out. But for community garden gigs, we mostly rely on the nonprofit who's administering the gig to have equipment. But your question gave me a good opportunity to also tell you that One of the things we don't allow our workers to do is use any power tools. They can't climb on ladders. They can't go over water. Again, because, you know, sort of as we like to say at the end of the day, that our workers' safety is our primary responsibility and the environmental work is second. So there's been times where people have wanted us to use chainsaws and things, and of course we haven't been able to, but we're doing all of the other work we can without power tools and things.
Now, you mentioned the pay, so this would be great to give, you know, a lot of times people shy away from what they think are volunteer opportunities, but this is twofold. You're getting a chance to get back to nature and do something, plus you're getting paid. And a lot of times when people start working with things like community gardens, they discover that it is fun, that it is something that is helping clean up the environment, and they're getting paid for it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and really we've seen people that just come out over and over again. We thought people would use the platform a few times on an as needed basis, but we're finding that people are really taking community gardening, and a lot of folks are finding what type of gig they like. Some of the folks that like to plant trees take every one of those gigs they can. So I think I fully understand what you mean. It's been a real blessing and an enjoyable ride to be out and see people sort of flourishing in their decided field.
If someone is trying to start a community garden, do you guys, if they called you, could you come out and look at their property and see if it's even worth it? Or, you know, because sometimes people just know, I want to start a garden, and maybe the land where they're trying to do it, the drainage is not set up for it, and they don't realize that. They're not skilled enough to know that. Do you guys would you consider coming out to look at a property?
Yeah, absolutely. And so because we've already done that, and the way we've done that is actually going to these two gentlemen here, like Victoria said, and with Marcus and Plus. And Plus has been great, you know, at Oak Cliff Veggie Project, because he had a few gardens already. And then when he saw that people like Marcus and Dewan were starting their own community gardens, and they were just at that time, you know, a vacant space between two houses, but you got to work with what you got. We would call up Plus and say, hey, Plus, do you want to go take a ride with me tomorrow morning and see if this is worth doing? And he's been very generous with his time. So yes, we'll absolutely come out and take a look at something. But we'll defer to these two experts here that are on the screen.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Do we have other questions?
Yes, Wendell had asked if it was Advanced Placement International. Is that correct? The name of the school you were talking about?
Oh, I'll double check that. It'll only take me 1 second. It's Advanced Preparatory International. So this is the school here, the API school.
Oh, I got one of those words right.
Sorry, yeah, it's kind of a mouthful, which is, I believe, why everyone down at the garden anyway just refers to it as API, but Advanced Preparatory International. And any other questions? I know you guys have a board meeting to run, and I was a former board member of a few nonprofits, and I know how that goes, and I don't want to hold you longer than I should use time for, but happy to answer anything else you got for me.
That won't work, Al. We have our board meetings separately.
You're a pro. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, are there any other questions? I'm sure.
Well, Al, could you have?
Who is this?
Yeah, Al, I wondered if you have a couple extra minutes. This is Victoria, aka Veronica to you, Dan.
Okay.
Al, if you could go over just a little bit of your own advocacy journey and how kind of you started down this path in Hawaii.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we're just on my Instagram account, I'm just going to switch over to my own and show you that real fast, because that'll answer that question. So I'm actually returning to Hawaii at the end of June. I'm sad to say, but it'll give us a good opportunity to grow Socialwise there. And I was a publicly elected official for a few terms in Hawaii. And so I have this great opportunity to go back and try to leverage government resources there for this project, but I'll be coming back and forth to Dallas. But I pulled this up to show you these pictures of ghost nets, for example. And what had sort of happened is, you know, here in Kailua, this is the beach I lived on. we get a lot of marine debris, whether it's ocean plastic washing up or which you can see here in this photograph. So we get ocean plastic, ghost nets. And when you live right next to the beach and you see this every day, if you're a normal person, in my opinion anyway, you just get out and pick it up. I got sort of addicted to doing that though, and taking care of my home. And, you know, started going out almost 4 or 5 days a week and cleaning up trash. Started Hawaii Ocean Ambassadors and ran that nonprofit for 7 years before moving here to Dallas, because my work is an elected official. I was the chair of the subcommittee on homelessness, and I was also the chair of Parks and Recreation. I was running an environmental cleanup nonprofit, and my brother was a former homeless heroin addict who was incarcerated in Baltimore City for many years. And so when I learned of SocialWise, they asked me to be a board member to try to start a pilot program just as a board of advisors member for them in Hawaii. And then the opportunity came, and Mark Cuban said, you know, get that guy out here, we'll give him a salary. So I decided to take this opportunity here with SocialWise to marry all of this work that I was already doing with Hawaii Ocean Ambassadors. And it's been a dream of mine to pay homeless people to clean the beach in Hawaii. Similar to Dallas, you know, that has give or take 5,000 people experiencing homelessness. In Hawaii, we have only 453, and you just say, this is a problem that we can solve. And you can see on a single day cleanup, we get a lot of plastic. Trying to find a good one for you, but this is just a standard day. This is the back of my old pickup truck in Hawaii. You get that in a single couple hours off the beach. And this sort of grand vision that I'm almost loath to share, because it's going to be a 2 or 3 year project at least, is we're creating a biofusion plant on Oahu right now that can take ocean plastic, melt it down into blocks that are sort of like adult-sized Lego blocks that can then be used to build modular homes. And the ultimate goal for me with SocialWise and everything else is to have homeless people clean the beach on Oahu, take that plastic, melt it down into building blocks, and then give it back to them to build their own homes on Hawaii state homeland land that is reserved for the homeless. And this would be this great circular economy solution. And if we can pay people at every step of the way to clean our reefs, get this out of there before there's fish death entanglement, and then use that same plastic to build their homes, I think we're onto something that might inspire the whole world.
And see, that's a great idea. I had an idea of a large homeless population that we have. What about, instead of them just hanging around trash in the place, you pay them to clean up, and it changes their attitude about a lot of things. So I have, but I don't know how to do that, you know, in Dallas, but, you know, I think that's a great idea.
Thank you so much for saying so. I couldn't agree more. We had seen sort of over and over. We did have a little pilot in a town called Waimanalo where there was an on the beach homeless encampment. And when we started cleaning the beach there in front of the encampment every day, slowly but surely folks started coming out of their tent set up and said, hey, you know, what are you doing? Said we were picking up trash today, and people would slowly but surely start trusting us and joining us in that effort. And it was really inspiring to say, at the end of the day, you know, sometimes you just need to take a little pride in your space. And I think that pride is sort of a gateway experience to caring more and more about yourself and your environment.
I don't see any glass floats in that trash, Al.
Ah, you're a legend. So everyone believes I've been robbed my entire career. I'm scrolling through this quickly just to give you a sense. It was 7 years of doing this work. And I had every one of my neighbors got a glass ball somehow off the beach, which for those on the call that don't know, Japanese fishing floats or buoys used to be made of glass. And it takes 20 years for something to cross the Pacific that's garbage. And if you're lucky on Oahu, occasionally you'll find a glass ball and everyone hangs them from their tree like ornaments. So I have not been lucky, sir, but I've put in the work.
Well, I was on a Coast Guard buoy tender that actually stopped the ship and hung a kid overboard with a big hook just so they could get a glass float out of the ocean.
I'm shocked. I'm surprised to hear someone that knows about those, but I appreciate your service and right on. Yeah.
I've been on Laysan Island. You know where that is?
I certainly do. The albatross, and they eat plastic and die from it. So I'm very familiar.
Well, the glass floats are just like thousands of them washed up there. It's part of a refuge. You can't go there, Al.
I'm trying to find a science trip to get out there at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So,
really a shame because everybody thinks of Hawaii as being a pristine place, and you see all the pictures of the, the hotels and the beaches and all this. But if you've actually been on the countryside in Hawaii, there's a lot of poor people there, and there's a lot,
absolutely. A lot of good
standard
things,
living.
yeah, absolutely. And this trash doesn't help either. And, when you look at things like these ghost nets that wash in every day, because I think you'll appreciate this. It's kind of a cool circular story. The ghost nets that come in, there have been 382 entanglements of humpback whales crossing the channel between Maui and Oahu in the past 16 years. So you're talking about a massive number of whales that are getting hung up in these ghost nets. And tragically, what will happen is the ghost net will go around the whale, get stopped at its tail a lot of the time, and it will braid into the whale's flesh. The scar tissue will grow over it. The whale will drag it for 2 to 3 months until it's exhausted. It can't eat appropriately. It can't keep up with its pack, and they die from it. And so citizens get these nets off the beach. The government won't do it. They always claim jurisdiction. Half the sand is the state, half the sand is city and county, and you can't prove which is which, so we're not doing it. So we chop these things up. We get them out to the road. We bring them to H-Power. They're melted down to provide energy for homes in Honolulu. And in 2016, that's the only data stat I have for it. In 2016, we had 146 homes in Honolulu powered for the entire year on these ghost nets. So Hawaii has this great opportunity to sort of set an example for the rest of the world, as does Dallas. No worse trash place sort of in the United States than Oahu, just because of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and how the trade winds blow garbage into Oahu, and sort of no worse food desert than southern Dallas to grow community gardens. And so I do think we have these huge opportunities to not just sort of like make a small problem a little bit better. I think we have huge opportunities both on Oahu and here in Dallas to really address some structural needs that need to change.
Okay, are there any other questions for Al? Well, I guess not, Al. I think you can take off now.
Saved by the bell. Well, I greatly appreciate you having me on. I do apologize. I should have just walked through the slide deck. But it's funny, I've talked to Victoria so many times, it feels like I'm telling the same story, the same person over and over, and was glad we were able to make this a little more discussional in the end. So I appreciate you having me on, and happy to answer any questions any of you have. And I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the chat on the Zoom here for you guys. So anyone feel free to reach out to me by phone or email. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Al. You did great. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. It means a lot. And thanks for all the work you do. Have a good one.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Has David Griggs showed up yet?
Liz is here.
Yeah, I was gonna, well, if David's not here, let me just make a comment. They had the Dallas City Council runoffs last Saturday. And I believe all 5 of the candidates that David wanted us to support won, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. So that was, and Sahan and a group of guys from his school helped one of those candidates. Which one was it? Do you remember, Chris? Who the Sahan and David helped
Yeah, I don't know.
Was it
hand
Schultz?
out? Who was it?
I think it may have been Schultz.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
What
think
was
it was Janie Schultz.
yes, I believe that's correct. So anyway, we did good with that. Okay, well, that's all. Liz, do you have anything you want to say about ICO or outings?
I don't. I apologize for getting one late. I was delayed. But we did get I got an email today that implies that we'll have an update on outings reopening by tomorrow, or possibly. So it looks like we might get something sooner versus the beginning of July. So I'll keep you posted. Mark and Arthur did the leader training. They were scheduled to do the 16-hour or the 14-hour, whatever leader training online for the Zoom there was the training for trainers that I did about a month ago. They were both scheduled to do it this past weekend. So they may have information. I thought I just saw Arthur on the call there. So he may have more information than I do. But anyway, at least it was something positive in the right direction.
He had the same information you just gave.
Okay.
Did you say 14 hours?
Yeah, it was 2 days, 6 or 7 hours over 2 days.
Okay.
And this was the training for the lead, for the people doing the trainings.
Train the trainers.
Train the trainers. It was an update and how to approach things from being more inclusive and just attitudinal. And when I did it, it was real good. Ours was the first one, so there was a few little glitches, but I thought it was very beneficial.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed before we think about the journey?
Great meeting tonight, Victoria, Dan. That was really, really wonderful. Thank you for putting that together.
Thanks, Wendell. I thought it went really well. I am very appreciative of Al.
Yes, that was really good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Maybe we can use some of those workers in the future, Victoria.
Not if, well.
Well, Al and I have talked, but like he said, because their purview right now has to be like gardening or things in ground, we haven't quite been able to come up with an exact project. But yes, I agree. We need to work this out somehow because it's such a great opportunity.
Well,
Yeah.
any cleanup project, whether it's the Audubon Center, Cedar Ridge or White Rock Lake or whatever, they're already skilled. They're already trained. They would
Yes.
be wonderful, and we could join
Yes.
them. We could join them as
Absolutely.
volunteers, and it would
Absolutely.
be a win-win situation.
And that's what mostly I've been referring them to is other groups that specifically do this. And then we just kind of like, add on to that. But yes, ideally, as Chris mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I would love for them to expand their presence in advocacy for canvassing, for showing up maybe at council meetings, for, a whole myriad of possibilities.
Well, Al might even want to become a Sierran, Victoria, if you work on him.
Oh, that's easy. I'll sign him up. I can just sign him up. He doesn't have to
Yeah.
even know about it. I'll tell him. I'll
Yes.
tell him he's a Sierra Club member now.
Yeah, you can pay his dues for the first year.
I'll pay his dues.
Yeah, that
I will pay his
15
dues.
bucks.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a Sierra Club group in Hawaii.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Now you're getting on the right target here.
There
He's
is.
in Hawaii. He's in Hawaii, and we need a outing to Hawaii, Liz. You're in
Hey.
charge.
There we go.
Won't
There
even
we
do a
go.
bus trip. We'll just go float on over. Yeah, I love all the ideas. We just kind of have to look at the idea of paid volunteers because then they're not really volunteers. So there's some places where we might be able to use them and some maybe we just have to kind of look at that issue.
No, we just join them. We provide the true volunteers. We join the paid volunteers, and we all learn a lot about life and the problems these people are facing and how we can help. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah,
I
sounds
understand the
good.
idea. I'm all in favor of the idea. I'm just saying we kind of just need to look into it a little bit before we promise anything.
Hell, we'll just make commitments out the yin yang.
Yeah, other
Yes.
groups, absolutely. We've done this before. I mean, we've had this issue come up before and there's just, anyway. For later.
Well, it's gonna come up again.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And this group is amazing.
Okay, people, if there's nothing else, is there anything else before we adjourn?
Nope. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. And
Good night,
thanks, John.
everybody.
Thanks,
You're
John,
welcome.
for
Good night.
hosting.
Thanks, everybody.
And good night, everybody.
Good night.
See ya.